It has been a couple of months since we last spoke,
Yeah.
and I know a lot has happened with Gander, and I want to get all of the updates. But before we do, just for people who aren't familiar with Gander, give us the 60-second pitch in terms of what you're trying
Sure.
to build.
Yeah. So flashback to just about a year ago, we went through we didn't go through the U.S. election, but kind of the whole world went through the U.S. election, and talk of 51st state really drove a lot of conversations online about data sovereignty, kind of disparate opinions about the elections were really coming to light. And, he's pretty much spent the last 10 years easily with social media creating more and more division. And I just thought we can do something about this. And so Gander was kind of born from that. Just decided to create social media that is actually social and hosted in Canada under our values and our laws.
It is something that Canadians do want. I think we've seen this, especially over the past few months. But one of the things that surprised me is just the number of people who have stepped up to become investors in Gander. So
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the crowdfunding, because to me, this feels like a total tipping point insofar as the future of Gander.
Yeah, so when we first kicked this off, I've been involved in a few startups, largely in like more the B2B kind of space. And we started exploring how we're going to fund this thing. And so, at first friends and family, some of them. And then, we did start talking to VC. And what we quickly learned was that the growth at all costs model, the VCs tend to be looking for that kind of unicorn. And while I hesitate to say that we're not a unicorn, in as much as that would be a silly thing to say. But what we're not looking for is to like the growth at all costs and, being beholden to stakeholders who may have intentions that aren't our own. And ultimately, we realized that the Canadians, more or less average Canadian, and the folks who are following us and have been our supporters would in fact be our best partners. And so we connected with Front Funder. And we put up a campaign. We were looking to raise 1.5 million minimum, with an ultimate goal of 2.5, but with a comfortable goal of 1.5. And we did that within a few weeks. And now we're at 1.7275 with 2,100 Canadians who've all invested from as little as $250. So we're very excited.
It is incredible to see the support that Gander has had. Just full disclosure, I've been an advisor for the past few months and have a little bit of the inside story of Gander. It has evolved in terms of what Gander will be, especially from a technology standpoint, because I know it was first planned to be built on Blue Sky. That has shifted a little bit. We are now in 2026. So can you give us an update as far as what Gander is today in terms of the technology behind it?
Yeah, sure. So it's still built on what they call the Atmosphere, the decentralized network that is kind of the backbone of Blue Sky. Only what we're doing is we're creating the sovereign version of that. So it's interoperable with Blue Sky, meaning you can retrieve and post to Blue Sky if you choose. But then the app itself, initially we had started off with Blue Sky's app, which also is open source, as our base. But all of the things that we really wanted to do with Gander it wasn't going to work for us to start from that place. And so we moved into building our own app from scratch instead of kind of, hacking what Blue Sky's already done. And so it was a big shift for us. You're in the middle of a startup, you're trying to raise funds and all of this, and then you decide, let's start over. But kind of out of necessity and out of wanting to do something unique. Big shift, but we're now in a place where we're very early beta testing with friends and family, and of course with the team. I was very narrowly had an invite for you for Christmas. I was looking so forward to that. But I really do want this to be. It's got to be not just passable. It's got to be good. And so, yeah, so we're fixing bugs now. We just got chat implemented on the platform, which because of Christmas, I haven't even had a chance to look at yet, but I'm very excited for that. And the team, the developers, they're all kind of working as hard as they can, including some through the holidays.
There is a lot of pressure on you and the team because to be able to get out into the Canadian marketplace with something that is better than Facebook is not an easy task for anyone. How do you feel at this moment in time when you think about the expectations that people have
Yeah.
of Gander?
Yeah. And I recognize that we've set some of those expectations ourselves. There's definitely pressure, and I think the way that we look at the app is not as like a Facebook killer or an Instagram killer or TikTok. We've blended a lot of features from a lot of different apps, the things that not just we like personally, but the things that we believe have the best chance of bringing the most Canadians on board. For one, like people love groups on Facebook, and the younger audiences want to make sure they have that Instagram image like experience. And there are people who still like to flip through TikTok videos and reels and that kind of thing. So we're blending all of those things, but then also really giving it a social element, while trying to mitigate things like disinformation, misinformation, bullying, hate, all of that stuff. So trying to make it a friendlier place.
I think that you have a bit of an advantage right now because the Facebook experience has deteriorated. Despite my very strong opinions about Mark Zuckerberg and the team, if I even put those aside and I actually think about my experience on Facebook, it feels to me like the early days of decay. And I know a lot of people feel the same way. It reminds me a little bit of the MySpace days when you started to realize, okay, you know what, this isn't working as well as it's supposed to work, and user expectations aren't being met. What can you take away from the disappointment that some Canadians have within that Facebook ecosystem to build something that is so much better?
So I think the missing element, and like the things that are still popular, and for some people, it is the only place it exists. Things like groups, places where you are having these kind of personal or one-on-one or group communications that aren't invaded by advertising all the time, and where you don't feel that manipulation, where the feed is just I don't even know these people. Who is this? What's this content that? And so these places where there's points of interest, I think that's something that it still does well on Facebook, and that's something that we are really gravitating toward. And then I think it comes down to not manipulating people. That's for us anyway, is that you can sense it. You just know when you're being advertised to, and it's the algorithm is taking over. And we like to think of the user as the algorithm at Gander instead of us producing one for them.
Oh, when you think about the next few months, I know a lot of people are waiting to try Gander out, and I have to say that I have a bunch of questions that people sent me, ironically, on Threads to ask you today. So we're going to get to those in just a couple of minutes. But what do the next few months look like? Because one of the things I'm sure you have to take advantage of is this momentum and this feeling of Canadian pride and this desire for more digital sovereignty. All of those things have been building over the past few months. So you have a bit of a window to take advantage of that momentum.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to that pressure thing in some ways, and having setting expectations, and we try to be transparent. Like when we made our shift, in technology, we made sure that was on our roadmap, that things had extended. And so it comes down to more of that pressure than that pressure, and the pressure we put on ourselves to make sure we're keeping Canadians and others safe in the social environment, as opposed to just grow at all costs. And so, yeah, we're in this window. I don't know when it closes. I mean, it seems like no social media platform can do anything good at the moment. So that kind of helps. And then, on the political side, obviously, Canadians are still fearful, and I'm fearful for all of us. So I don't know when that window really closes. But what the next few months look like is, so right now we have 37,000 people on our early access program who all want to get onto the platform, grab a username, all of that stuff. 10,000 people who want to be beta testers. And so our goal is to get all of those people on there for the end of March. But recognizing that, okay, I haven't tested chat yet. Let's see how that goes. We're going to be doing this in phases. It'll be smaller and then larger groups. And, a big piece of that too is, as you said, the data sovereignty piece. We're not running off of Amazon or Google, or like, this is, we're building something that's really different. And so while the app may look great and work great, and that's, of course, the goal, we really have to make sure that the platform can support it as well. And so there'll be some scary moments of, okay, today let's let on 5,000 people and see what happens. But that's kind of the plan right now, is to just gradually increase the number of people on there right till the end of March. And hopefully we get everybody on there and start getting invites to other people.
You and I have run into each other at a couple of conferences in Canada, including one that was focused on the future of AI, as well as one that was focused on digital sovereignty and keeping people safe online. As you attend these events and think about the desire and need for a different platform in the social media space, what have you learned along the way about what's going to make Gander a win for people?
It's funny because you go to these events and there's this focus, right? Like, as you mentioned, there's the AI event, and of course it's the AI gold rush. That's what it seems like there. And then you go to something that's more around the data sovereignty side, and academics, and a little bit more social interest and that kind of thing. And I think the things that, certainly the data sovereignty, the McGill event that we were at, it was far more exciting and far more just emotional, while as the gold rush around AI doesn't interest us at all. But I think the biggest takeaways are that there's a certain contingent of Canadians who see the big picture, who see the flaws in existing social media. They see the flaws in it being owned entirely by foreign interests. And I think that that audience is increasing. And I what I also see is that it's that's maybe like it's a tip of the iceberg. It's a small number of people, and there's a vast majority of people who don't know, don't care, unfortunately. And so the big thing for us is we want to bring Canadians on for a safer experience, whether they know it's safer or want it to be safer or not. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that more Canadians are becoming more aware of this issue. I will say that as someone who covers the consumer tech world, I think what you have really in your favor is the fact that there is much more awareness over the past year from Canadians who are recognizing that, okay, wait, these algorithms are dangerous to both me and my family and my neighbors and my community. And then they recognize a bit more about the importance of digital sovereignty. And then they're seeking out these made in Canada alternatives. So all of those things I think are happening. Whereas 5-10 years ago, I don't think that was the case. But there's been a shift in the mindset, I think, among Canadians that will be for the better. I know there's a ton of pressure on you and the team right now, but if you think about kind of your hopes and dreams for Gander, what does that look like? When do you wake up and say, okay, we did it?
Yeah, I mean, so that's interesting. I've been asked similar questions before, like when do you deem this a success? And certainly, as I said, we're not aiming to be the Facebook killer. We are there are others around the world who are, building similar platforms. And I think that's the nice thing about this is people are waking up to every country, every region needs its own sovereign tech, and social is one of those things. And I think the success for me would be, you know, uh, even if 1 million Canadians joined Gander, and we were protecting 1 million people from, protecting their data, protecting their them from manipulation and from the disinformation, that would be a success. And I think, the disinformation, misinformation piece of it, uh, having it actually work would really be a success for me. Yeah, like the idea that we can educate while people have a user experience, that's what we're aiming for. Yeah, our hope is that really works, and that, yeah, there's a sovereign social cloud in Canada.
You've said a couple times you don't want to be the Facebook killer, and I have to ask, why not? Because Facebook should be killed in many ways, and I know you probably can't say that, but I mean, isn't that sort of something that would be good for our communities?
100%. So from the moment we started Gander, the first thing, and I've said it numerous times, is social media either has to go or it's got to be fixed. And I don't see any of the major platforms fixing anything right now. And so, yeah, yes, it would be fantastic if that happened, if Gander became the alternative. That whole thing of setting expectations that we talked about just a few minutes ago. I don't want to be a growth at all cost machine, and I want to make sure that we do this in a really sane way. And if the result of that is that other platforms, fail to compete, the U.S. market wants to come onto Gander, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So yeah, and I don't think it's a solo venture either. As I said, Gander is one of many. There's Eurosky. There are others in Australia who are building platforms. And I think combined, those are the things that end up being the Facebook killer, the X killer, or at least causing a real dent. So
sure, yeah. So your answer is very Canadian, I have to say. It's very, very polite.
yeah.
But I think deep inside, Ben, I think I've gotten to know you a little bit. I don't think that would be a bad outcome if we ate away at their market share here in Canada.
It's got to change either way. Something's got to change.
It really does. So I had mentioned that just before we started this interview, I went on to Threads, and hopefully eventually that will be Gander that I go on to ask these questions. But I asked people if they had any questions for you. I think you definitely answered some of them, but I do want to read out, we have about 4 or 5 questions from people just so perhaps you can give us some insight. The first one is from Z Chamu, who says, I would love to know if there's plans for creator monetization. Have seen lots of people in other countries making bank off other platforms, but nothing here.
Yeah, and that's something that we talked about early on and is in our plans. In fact, we've done a bit of modeling of what monetization might look like, and that is definitely in our plans. Everything from creators being able to, sell tickets to events, sell digital products, create private monetized groups, that kind of thing. That is absolutely in our plans. It may not be in the way that others are currently used to, where you're earning advertising dollars, percentages. That's not something that we're looking at right now. But certainly more ethical approaches to creators monetizing. Absolutely.
Bingo Fuel, which is quite the handle, asks, how will Gander deal with AI-generated content and imagery? I feel like slop is invading every social channel, and refuge from it would be amazing.
Yeah, that is a tough one. So the challenge is, what's the best way to moderate AI is probably another AI. And that's not something that, like, we're very adamant about being sovereign. We're adamant about using Canadian or open source tech. And those are things that can be done. Also, there's a huge contingent of our user base who doesn't want their content even, remotely scanned by AI. And so there's a lot to get through in that. The biggest steps that we're taking in order to mitigate some of this is we can't afford to build AI to fight AI. So what we're doing is we're doing adult human verification, which there'll be multiple facets of. The first of which is going to be send us a toonie via Interac with a connected system, which identifies that you're not only Canadian, which for now we're kind of trying to limit things to, but you're an adult, and you have been identified by a bank. So that's the first step. And ultimately, we're looking at other platforms like Canada Post, who has on-phone ID verification, because we don't want people's data. That's the thing, is we don't want your identifying information. If we can avoid it, we'd rather not have to store it. And so platforms like Canada Post, that your ID stays on your phone. It just tells us, yep, this is an adult human. So we're looking at those as options, with the idea that you can't post, comment, or chat on the platform without being identified as a human. So now that doesn't mitigate somebody else creating AI slop and putting it on the platform. And so what we're aiming to do is, around moderation, is encouraging people to flag it so that it can be labeled and people can keep it out of their feeds if they like. And we're also aiming to get users to flag it up front. So if you post something that's AI, click the button that says it's AI so that others can filter it out if they want. And then what that also means is that it's not up to just moderators. It means we're trying to create a culture that specifically you can get called out if you don't flag it as AI and we find out it is, or users find out that it is. So those are the things we're looking at right now.
Great. Chris asks, what would Gander do to combat misinformation and disinformation? And I should say we have a similar question here from an account called Unbothered Moose, which is very Canadian. So you touched a little bit about on misinformation and disinformation, but that's a hard thing to control, but critically important.
Yeah, and so we've been figuring out how to do this from the get-go. And we think from the start, the best approach is going to be, first of all, we're allowing news links.
Yay.
Yeah.
Facebook killer. Facebook killer.
We're allowing news links. Every link, image, video, whatever it is that you're posting is actually the type of post that you're producing. It's actually reflected in the name, if you're posting a link, it says link. Or if you're posting news, it says news. So that it's identifying that that's what this is. Meaning, if someone posts an image of a news article that's fake, you will be able to see that it's an image, first of all. Second of all, each post that, especially with news, is put through an API that provides what the bias and what the fact-checking record is for that publisher. So again, it's educating users on, oh, hey, I read a lot of this stuff or I'm posting a lot of this stuff, and look at that. It's all left-leaning with low fact-checking, for example. Like it's educating the individual, and the individual who posts it and the individual who reads it. So we hope that there's something there where people can start to identify where misinformation is coming from, and identify for themselves when they're spreading it, which we hope will be helpful. And then ultimately, and not in the first release by any means, we think there's some work to do around how people go about posting. Like I brought this up with someone the other day, and I said, you get a lot of people who make statements as though they're fact. Pierre Poilievre is this, did this, as though they're fact when they may not be, or Trudeau, or whatever it is. And part of the problem is our education system has taught us that, well, if you're writing a paper and you make a statement, it's your opinion, right? It's your opinion. But social media has taken that away. Social media, you scan, you're not reading a paper. You're not coming in with the assumption that, and so my belief is that users are seeing things, taking them in as fact, as opposed to just opinion. And so we're looking for ways to ensure that users start thinking about how they phrase things, because it's something simple as, if you start with "I believe," as opposed to, Poilievre did this, I believe Poilievre did. Sure. All of a sudden, there's a different context there, a different meaning. And so our hope is that when people do post things that they were claiming to be factual, that they actually start to back it up And then when they're not, that they maybe start using language that is a little bit more clear. But again, these are long-term goals. We're not anywhere near that yet.
One last question for you from Virtual Hammy. And Virtual Hammy says, do we have an official launch date for the app or even the beta?
Yeah. So, well, technically we're in our beta right now, though very, very close and small. And we're going to be sending out invites in the next couple of weeks to start getting more and more people on. Again, it's going to be small groups as we go. And, depending on what happens with chat, you may get on there and be like, oh, there's got chat, but it doesn't work. I can't chat. There are going to be bugs that need to be resolved. But thankfully, we have a great team. We're working with a company called Eggshell Company, who's just expanded in order to help us accelerate things and bring more features out faster. And they're just fantastic. So I have every confidence that we're going to start really having a lot of people on there. And by March, invites will start going out from users to other users. So.